Welcome back to Hardball. Former Vice President Dick Cheney launched a blistering critique of President Obama this week for taking some time to decide what strategy to pursue in Afghanistan. Let's listen.
Having announced his Afghanistan strategy in March, President Obama now seems afraid to make a decision and unable to provide his commander on the ground with the troops he needs to complete the mission. It's time for President Obama to make good on his promise. The White House must stop dithering while America's armed forces are in danger. Make no mistake, signals of indecision out of Washington hurt our allies and embolden our adversaries. Waffling while our troops on the ground face an emboldened enemy endangers them and hurts our cause.
But did Cheney's attacks really help the White House? Is he a reminder of the mess he left behind in Afghanistan? David Corn is Washington Bureau Chief for Mother Jones Magazine, and Terry Jeffrey is Editor-in-Chief of CNSNews.com. Gentlemen, I just want to put a couple of facts on the table before we discuss this. First of all, the latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll admittedly was out this summer, earlier in the summer, but it has Cheney at 26% positive in public estimate right now. Number two, during the buildup of the war in Iraq, he said that we would be greeted as liberators. That was his farsight going into that war. Greeted as liberators under a war that cost us thousands of dead Americans and cost tens of thousands on the other side in a war that he said was over before it got started. He also said that the insurgency, as he called it, in Iraq was in its last throes about 4 years ago. That's good news for soldiers who are still fighting it. His facts have been wrong. His history has been wrong. His predictions have been dead wrong. He's not liked in America. And here he is coming back like Freddy Krueger at Halloween time. I don't know why he's doing it, except he must be a mole for this administration, because it's got to help Barack Obama. Your thoughts, Terry Jeffrey?
Well, Chris, no,
is he helping Barack Obama secretly?
No, I don't think so, Chris. I think the short-term political problem that President Obama has with Afghanistan is he's almost assuredly going to significantly increase the number of troops he deploys there. He may not give the 40,000 that General McChrystal wants, but he is going to increase the troops, and that's going to anger the left-wing base of the Democratic Party. It's not going to appease the Republicans. But his long-term political problem, Chris, is what happens substantively in Afghanistan. This is going to be Barack Obama's war. Everybody's going to know that this was his strategy, and ultimately he's going to be judged both politically and in history by whether his strategy actually works.
So he will be blamed for Afghanistan the way that Nixon was blamed for Vietnam. He inherited a war, and no matter what he does with it, it will be his war, you're saying?
Well, I think what really happened in Vietnam is the Democratic Congress cut off Vietnam after Nixon was out of office. But look, there's no doubt.
Okay, in other words, we would have won the war if we had continued to fight it.
Look, it might have turned out differently. If President Obama wants a model right now, he ought to look at what George W. Bush did after the 2000 elections. The Republicans got thrown out of Congress. The war looked like a disaster. Many people thought it was lost.
Okay,
casualties were very high. He doubled down with the surge. Very politically unpopular, but it worked. President Obama needs to find a strategy that works, whether it's politically popular or not.
Before we move on, we lost 58,000 guys in Vietnam, and we lost a lot more, lost more legs and limbs, and lives were ruined, millions perhaps, hundreds of thousands on the other side. You were saying we should have continued that mayhem and continued to fight, losing more men, right?
No, what I said is when the war in Vietnam was lost, is when the Democrats turned and ran out on the whole country.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to David Corn. David, do you think that Dick Cheney is weirdly helping Barack Obama, perhaps against his will, but he comes back with a black tie on, with a tuxedo? He and Scooter Libby both celebrating their latest trophies they got from one of these right-wing front groups. Celebrating what? It's like Little League. Everybody gets a trophy. You get completely wrong about everything. You lose it all. You're completely wrong on every prediction. People hate you, and they give you wear your black tie tonight and make sure you're in the mood to receive an award. What goddamn award? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it. What award are they giving these guys, and what for?
Well, Chris, he got the Keeper of the Flame
I'm sorry for using
award.
that term. It just seems so outrageous. You give a guy an award for taking us into a war that he claimed victory in before we even got started, and caused thousands of lives, and he was dead wrong on every front. Go ahead, your thoughts.
Well, he got the Keeper of the Flame award, and then in accepting that award, he accused this administration, the Obama administration, of dithering. You know, this is after he and George Bush were in charge of the Afghanistan war for 7 years. And, you know, you can go back and look at the record again and again and again. It was an effort, whether it was right to get in or not in the first place. It was an effort, though, that they neglected repeatedly. I remember back in 2006, I did a story, very simple story. I wanted to know who in the Bush administration was in charge of Afghanistan policy. And you know what the answer was? In 2006, after 5 years of being there, nobody. The one National Security Council person who came closest had it as a part-time position. Her other responsibility was the war in Iraq. And so now he comes along because Barack Obama is spending 6 months or even less reviewing strategy, and he accuses his administration of dithering. Just a couple of weeks ago, Bob Gates, Secretary of Defense, he worked in the Bush-Cheney administration. He came out and he said that Barack Obama's strategic review is the first time we've had any strategy in Afghanistan since the 1980s. That covers the entire Bush-Cheney period. So it's kind of laughable, but you're right. And Terry is right. Let me say this. Barack Obama has a tremendous problem, both policy-wise and political, in Afghanistan. It's a mess. It's very hard to figure this out. If you look at Barack Obama alone with the Afghanistan problem, it's a very difficult situation. But you bring Dick Cheney into the equation and put him next to Dick Cheney, and Barack Obama, he looks great on almost any matter. So the more Cheney talks, the more political space and the higher standing Barack Obama is going to have.
You know, Terry, you and I probably agree on this. When we aren't on the show, we'll probably agree when we're together. But isn't it amazing that guys who are all these hawks, these guys at the American Enterprise Institute, Scooter and Dick Cheney and the whole rest of them, they always celebrate each other's warrior talk. When it comes time to be drafted, they dither for deferments. They're all for all the wars, but when the other guys have to fight them, their real war policy is dithering, not fighting, sending other kids, working class kids, to fight these wars. How can Cheney be such a hawk if he's never had, he said he had other priorities during Vietnam. He was a hawk
Chris,
back then. This country wouldn't be feared, by the way, if everybody fought as hard as Dick Cheney, because then nobody would fight. Because the bottom line is these are chicken hawks who love to talk war. He wants to double the troop levels in every war, more wars. If you let Cheney, we'll go to war with Iran next. You can have these. Give me the point here. What do you really feel towards these guys?
First of all, Chris,
do you think they're real warriors or just pretend?
Let me respond to what you said. First of all, I want to defend the Center for Security Policy, which awarded this Keeper of the Flame award to Dick Cheney.
And it's run by
Frank Gaffney, who was a Deputy Secretary of Defense
and was
during the Reagan administration, the administration that won the Cold War.
Right.
Frank Gaffney is in part responsible for the policies that defeated communism. Secondly, no matter what you say about the policies of the previous administration on national security, and I did have some disagreements with where they went. I am not a Wilsonian. I do not believe in promoting democracy all around the world. Dick Cheney and George W. Bush can say this. In the 8 years following the September 11th, 2001 attacks, there was not another terrorist attack on the United States. They succeeded.
Wait a minute.
Now,
if that's your scorekeeping, who's responsible for 9/11? If you go by that scorekeeping, if it happens on your watch, you're responsible for it. If it doesn't happen on your watch, you're not responsible for it.
Al-Qaeda, an enemy of all Americans.
No, wait a minute. Who's responsible for 9/11? By this scorekeeping, they're responsible for 9/11.
For the policy that kept us safe.
But Terry, if that's the way you keep score, then they're responsible for 9/11.
Security for the American people, Chris, is how you keep score. Zero attacks.
Chris, you're
wait a minute.
Right.
9/11 was on their watch.
Right. And when we have the
who was responsible for 9/11, Terry? It was their watch. By your scorekeeping, if it's on your watch, you're responsible. Were they responsible for 9/11?
Look, Chris, you and I have talked before about the 9/11 Commission report. I think we both believe that was an excellent investigation of the sequence of events that led up to the 9/11 attacks and why this country was vulnerable. I think there's a lot of blame to go around. It went back a long time in history. And would I say that the Bush-Cheney administration can totally be absolved for blame for what happened that day?
Just be careful how you keep score, Terry.
The Clinton administration.
All this award giving and everybody's getting black tie on and getting trophies for defending the country. Just remember who was there.
But they did defend the country, Chris.
But Chris, you know that if a Democrat, had been in charge.
Okay, we'll be right back with other people. David Corn, thank you. Terry Jeffrey, have a nice weekend.